Here we go.
There we go.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the Drummers Education Connection. My name is Jeremy Steinkohler. We're here every Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. Pacific time to talk to you about all manner of topics related to drumming and teaching and performing and life and confidence and gear and all
Yeah.
kinds of geeky stuff that we get into. Sometimes it's really deep and sometimes it's really light. And I think today is going to be sort of, probably ranging toward the deep side, but somewhere in the middle, maybe. We are here to talk today with, I'm sorry, I'm here with my two great friends, Fred Fischer from Boise, Idaho. Say hi,
Woohoo.
Fred.
Hello.
And Chip Ritter down in Tucson, Arizona.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody.
Missing us today are Bart Robley and Rick Stojak, who've got stuff going on. Bart's on tour and Rick's, I think, visiting his mom. So we wish them the best with what they're doing, but they're happy and healthy, and we'll see them next week. And before we get started on today's topic, we always like to do a short segment we call Good Things, which is a chance for us to check in with one another and just hear about the good stuff that's going on, because, you know, there's so many heavy things going on right now. So it's good to focus on the positive for a minute. I'll kick it to you, Fred. What's happening, man?
Good things. Well, my wife and I just dropped off our number 3 son, Ian, to spring training for the Battalion Drum and Bugle Corps, and they're out of Salt Lake City, Utah. And so he will be there for 3 weeks. Man, they work these kids hard. They do 12-hour-a-day rehearsals 6 days a week, Sundays off.
Oh, my God.
When they begin tour, a lot of times, you know, they're traveling in amongst all of those rigorous training hours. They stay at high schools for training, and when they're on tour, they sleep on the floor in the gym. So you got like 150 performers that are all they're toughing it out, man. But they're young kids, so they can handle it. They can handle it. So this is his second year doing it. Our number 1 son, Christian, was in the battalion for 2019, 21, 22, and 23 on the snare line. And my son Ian is on the tuba line. So we're drum corps parents through and through. So that's one cool thing. The other is that you guys had Chris from Onyx on the show a couple months ago, and I was talking with Bart about Onyx microphones, because I use almost all Onyx microphones here in the studio and live. And Bart goes, you know, with all those things that you do, you might be able to get an endorsement. So he put me in touch with Chris. And as of last week, I am now on the roster with Onyx microphones. So I'm pretty
congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
That's fantastic. Yeah, great.
Those are my good things. Yeah.
Those are excellent. Both excellent things.
Yeah.
Are all your children drummers?
No. I have 4 sons. I just told that to Jeremy as we were going on. It's like, whoo, that's a lot of work. But they've all done percussion to some degree. But my firstborn, Christian, he's a marching percussion guy, so snare drum is his main thing. He can play a little bit of drum set, played in jazz band in high school, but that's not his focus. His focus is marching percussion. My number 2 son, Elliot, played saxophone and bari sax and a little bit of guitar. And then Ian, the one that we just took to drum corps, plays tuba, trumpet, trombone, and a little bit of percussion.
Cool.
And Jude's done some drums, and he played trombone in school this last year. And there was talk of him maybe moving into percussion for this next season. You know, 6th and 7th and 8th grade, especially 6th grade, if you go watch the school band, there's like 80 drummers.
Yeah, everyone wants to play drums.
And then the next year there's 30, and by the time they're in 8th grade, there's like 8 of them.
Right.
So they weed out pretty quick. So we'll see what happens.
Chip, how about you? What's going on, bud?
Wow, man, I can't top that.
It's a lot of stuff.
I got a speaker meeting this Saturday. That's a citywide speaker meeting. It's going to be about 250 people, and I'm the keynote speaker on recovery and sobriety. So I'm excited about that. That's a cool thing.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, man. Yeah. So I'm doing my thing, and that's about it. How about you, Jeremy?
Well, my son Evan comes home from college on Friday from his freshman year, so we're super excited to have him back. And he and I have a couple of shows together coming up this summer, which I'm really excited about. One of them is a duo show. It's just gonna be piano and drums.
Cool.
So yeah, and it's been really, I mean, he was amazing before he left, and then hearing how much he's progressed in just a year of working hard at school is really cool that I can notice it and hear the difference in his playing. So I'm excited to see him and play with him, and yeah, that's my good thing right now. Oh, I also got a couple more beaters from Dragonfly Percussion.
Nice.
Bass drum beaters. Yeah, I've got like four different ones now, and I'm loving them. They're like, this is my new favorite thing is bass drum beaters.
Cool. Nice.
Yeah. And I didn't even know for years, and for 45 years, I played one bass drum beater, And I was like, oh wow, yeah. Why didn't I think that this could be a cool thing, and you could open up the sound with different tones? So digging the Dragonfly stuff.
Very cool.
Yeah. So today we're here to talk about overcoming adversity and bouncing back from challenging situations. And we'd love to hear from you guys who are listening about some of your stories, or maybe you have some questions. This can run the gamut, right? It can be personal challenges, life setbacks, injuries, not getting the gig, getting kicked out of the band, all kinds of ways that life can throw you difficult things to deal with. And we're going to talk today about things that have happened to us and how we've experienced them and how we've grown through them, and maybe some strategies for helping you cope with some stuff that you're dealing with. So I'm going to kick it to Fred. Fred, why don't you just tell us your story, man?
Okay. Well, I've got a couple. I think the thing that's most recent that, I've been on the show several times now, and 10 months ago, I broke my leg while I was in Indianapolis at drum corps finals. And that has been a big challenge to navigate through all of that. And I don't know, I think for me personally, when I have something that comes along that is jamming the wrench in the gears of the machine and stopping that, I always had some kind of drive to get around that, to like, how do we get this thing moving and back up and running as quickly as possible? I think having a really great support group of family and friends around is really, really crucial to that, and not being afraid to say, hey, I need some help to get through whatever that is. Mm-hmm. So that was a major injury, breaking my leg and spending an extra week in Indianapolis with 2 surgeries, and then enduring that plane ride home was really uncomfortable.
I bet. And you're all by yourself in Indianapolis the whole time?
No. So I was there for drum corps finals, but my wife, Mary, had flown in earlier, like a week earlier, to volunteer with the drum corps. So she was traveling with them, and I was injured on a Friday. So I got into the ER, checked into a room, stabilized, all of that kind of stuff. And then she and my number 4 son, Jude, went back with the corps to finish whatever activities they had to do. So I was by myself for the first surgery, and then they came back on Sunday after they dropped off Ian at the airport to fly home. And then they stayed with me in the hospital room for the next week. So yeah, not completely by myself, just for like a day and a half, basically.
Gotcha.
To do that. But being a full-time musician, being a drummer, being a teacher, there was like, what do I do with all of that?
Right.
Thankfully I had you guys in my corner, and Bart volunteering, and I think Jeremy, I don't know if you did any, but I think Bart and Rick might have taken some of my students online for that week. Whoever that was, it was a huge relief for that to be able to happen, that my students were still taken care of. The following week, I had a former student come and teach for me. And so that was another big relief, that I had somebody that was already trained up that could step in and take care of that for me while I was in the in the living room on the couch staring at the ceiling. But I wanted to get back out here and start teaching as soon as possible. And so it was like rearranging one of my smaller kits. I could play the bass drum with my left foot, and I could get my right foot up on a stool, so it was extended, and I had my ice machine going, and my students were very understanding and patient. But all my live performances I had scheduled, I obviously could not do those. So that was in the beginning of August. I didn't play my first show again until January 3rd, and I got up on stage with a walker.
Wow.
And I had
Did
my
you get tennis balls on it?
No.
So 5 months, you were out of commission for 5 months from playing.
I was, yeah.
And during that time, were you despondent? Were you depressed? Were you feeling like, oh my God, what's going to happen to my career? Anything like that?
I did. I had this weird wave of all kinds of emotions that happened. I think just the injury itself and things that came to a screeching halt, like being able to perform. I had also, there's a country artist by the name of James Carruthers. I'm not sure if he's in Nashville, but he had been doing a lot of recording in Nashville, and some friends of mine from here had been recording in Nashville. And so in July of last year, my name kept coming up as a alternate drummer to do shows with him. He was
your Fred Rock Fischer.
That's right. He was on an arena tour opening up for Alan Jackson, and his rhythm section wasn't going to be available for the fall dates. So my name was in the hat for that. And so when that injury happened, that completely went away.
Right. Was that kind of a bigger gig than you're used to have ever had, or?
I've played arenas before, but that would be like an arena tour. So
Right.
that would be consistently doing that. And,
hard.
The pay was supposed to be great, and all of those things. So that was like a little moment that slipped out of my hands, so to speak. And then the front of house engineer for Lou Graham also lives here in Boise. It's interesting how many people of note have been moving here. But he had also called me around the same time, and he said, "What are you doing in October?" And I said, "Does Lou need a drummer?" He's like, "No, but we're going to need a drum tech for 2 weeks on a tour." And so that also wasn't able to take place. Right. But I fortunately, I was able to still teach, and I didn't really have any hiccups in that. But I don't know if it was part of the medication I was on, but there was a moment where I was awake for 3 days. I was just as awake as I am right now. And that we're heading into the 4th day of that, which was on a Thursday. I was supposed to start teaching at 2:00, and around 1:00, I had a complete meltdown. I came out of the bathroom, and my wife said, "How are you doing?" And I just sat on the bed, and I just started sobbing. And the more I sobbed, the worse it got. And I said, "I just need to be able to sleep." And so she called the doctor and said, "The dude's not sleeping, man. What do we got to do?" And so they gave me some, like a double dose of Benadryl. And within 20 minutes, I was out for like 4 hours, a glorious 4 hours.
Right.
But, I definitely had moments over the months, and even still, like, I'm still having trouble walking smoothly, and my leg gets really, really stiff. And it hasn't impeded my drumming too bad. The finesse in my pedals coming back. Sometimes I feel like I've got a mannequin leg; it won't move.
Right.
Yeah. And then other times I feel like my ankle will move freely. But it just depends on how much swelling goes on. And my physical therapist said, you can expect another 6 months of swelling while this is healing. So it's but keeping this healthy is so important. And so it's crazy how much this influences your physical being.
For those of you who are just listening and not watching us, Fred's pointing to his head.
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Attitude is really important.
It is.
So were there some things, that's what I was asking about, whether you ever dealt with sort of any demons there when you were going through it? Like, were there other than surrounding yourself with a supportive family and friends, which is, massive, of course.
Yeah.
Were there any sort of I don't know, practices that you did, or like, I don't know, any meditation or anything that helped you keep your mind right?
Well, I'm a man of faith, and so praying is a big thing for me.
Mm.
And Chip has been really great for me as far as that goes, as well. When I was really, really bad, Chip turned me on to this frequency thing. I can't remember exactly what it is. Chip could help fill in the blanks here, but it's listening to certain frequencies, like healing frequencies. Now, I don't know if that's a pocketful or not, but I can tell you this. I would get onto Apple Music and I would pull up the healing frequency, and this thing would like loop for hours. And so I would just have my phone next to my head while I was on the couch, and I would turn that on, and it really did help my entire body just relax and be calm. And it was easier to sleep when I had that going.
Oh, that's something.
Yeah, it was really soothing to have that. And sometimes I would set my phone on my chest with the vibration of that sound. And again, I can't speak like from a medical standpoint.
Yeah,
like,
well, yeah.
This is the thing.
Right.
I could just tell you how it made me feel having
Right.
that on there, and I could feel it vibrating my chest a little bit, and it was very calming. It was like getting a little micro massage on my chest.
Mhm.
So the thing about the frequency thing is, whether it's a pocket full or not, to determine whether it's a pocket full or not is the question I always ask is, does it work?
Yeah.
If it works for me, then that's what works.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think a lot can have to do with your belief in it, right? I mean,
Yeah,
if
like Dumbo and his magic feather.
I don't know about that, but
Dumbo had a magic feather that he flew with that made him fly. His mouse told him he could fly if he had this magic feather. And the whole story of Dumbo is he had the magic feather, but then he dropped it. But then he realized he could fly anyway.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm sure I read that story when I was young, but I don't remember it. But that, yeah, it's sort of that same deal. Like, what works for you and believing in it, and
if it works, it works.
Right.
If it works, don't fix it.
Right. So, Chip, how about you? You have any story? I mean, I know you have stories about overcoming setbacks. Anything you want to share?
Overcoming setbacks. Yeah, there's a bunch of them I can pull from, but mainly the main thing for me overcoming a setback that I can think of as far as drum career related was in 1997. I sold my truck and I emptied my savings account and put everything into the band fund to go with my metal band, and we went to Seattle to make it or break it and get a record deal. And I worked as an extra on the Kevin Costner movie The Postman up in Seattle doing our thing, and I went through all of this, got a job at the taco shop, burning my fingers at 6 a.m, letting a 17-year-old tell me what to do, and putting up with all this adversity in the situation because we're going to get a deal. We're going to get a record deal. We're going to a record deal. And then things didn't work out with the band and we broke up, and it was a huge setback. I went back to live with my mom with my tail between my legs, penniless. My dream of being a professional drummer was dashed on the rocks of the metal band, failing and not getting the record deal. And it's just one of those lessons I learned about not putting all your eggs in one basket for my career wise. And it helped me to become an independent drummer. So, I mean, there's a silver lining somewhere in almost every setback, I think. If you look in hindsight about the situation, it's like some of the worst things that ever happened to me, I really believe were my higher power closing a door and then opening a different one in retrospect. But it's hard to see that when you're going through the situation. So yeah, failing with that metal band was one of the biggest setbacks of my life. And I got through it by one day at a time, waking up one day at a time and saying, you know what, I'm going to be the best drummer I can be. I'm going to be a professional drummer. I don't know when, how, or who or what, but I started to climb back with that attitude of gratitude, like for what I did have. Like I still had my drums, I still had drumsticks, I still had the ability to play. I put an ad out in a paper, and somebody called me one day and said, I play in a country band on the MS Holiday cruise ship, Carnival cruise ship, and I'm looking for a drummer. What songs do you sing?
Hmm.
And I said, well, I don't sing. They pay me not to sing. He goes,
Yeah.
what songs are you going to sing when I hire you to play in my band? And I was like, I don't sing. I can't sing. He goes, I don't think you're hearing me. What songs are you going to sing when I hire you for this show to play in my country band? And I said, Devil Went Down to Georgia, The Chair, and Rockin' Robin. He goes, all right, great. You're hired. And I got my first gig as a professional drummer on the cruise ship. So it was cool. It was cool.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, like the James Carruthers thing with the Alan Jackson tour and going out on the road with Lou Gramm for 2 weeks, like, did that door get closed for a reason? I don't know what that reason might be, but sometimes you're not aware of those things until way farther on down the road.
Yeah, I later learned more about those band members and the type of people they were. And I got saved from being in a financial contractual obligation with people that I don't really respect or care to deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the deal with that.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm my own boss today. I run my drum lessons. I run my whatever career I have. I'm the CEO, and I like all the employees.
Yeah.
Yeah. All the employee. Right.
Yeah.
The employee.
Yeah. Right.
Well, when I was laying,
story.
I'm sorry, say that again.
I was asking Jeremy about a setback story.
Oh, go ahead, Fred. You jump in with what you got, and I'll
go. I was just going to talk about myself more.
Yeah, no, that's why you're here, man.
All about me.
Enough about me. Let's talk about me some more.
What do you think about it? Yeah, right.
I was when I was laying in the hospital in Indianapolis and not fully understanding the gravity of the situation. And when the doctors are telling me, like, you're not going to walk for 3 months.
Oh man, that's devastating.
And Mary's saying, well, he's a drummer for a living. Like, are there other options? And they're like,
yeah, right.
No, he's.
What if I pay more money?
Right. So I was laying there just like trying to absorb that information. Like, I'm not going to walk for 3 months. Like, I couldn't imagine my life not walking, and then I'm wondering, like, well, how do I get around the house or whatever? I'm picturing crutches or I did spend time in a wheelchair for a while and then the walker and eventually down to a crutch. And then now I walk like a penguin, but laying there and going, man, 3 months. And then getting home and getting established with the doctor here in Boise. And they're like, yeah, 3 months. And then at that 3 month mark, I go into my appointment and they take the x-rays and they come in and they said, bad news. And I'm like, what do you mean bad news? They're like, you can't walk for another month. So 3 months turned into 4. And I was just,
that's a setback.
Felt so crushed at that moment. And when we left and I got in the car, I just started crying. I was just like bawling my eyes out. I was like, another month of this was just unreal. But now it's been 10 months into this, and I'm walking around and hobbling around, but I can do most everything. I could still mow the lawn. I could do that. I've been up and down ladders.
You get to mow the lawn. You get to walk ladders.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's what I was going to ask. Is like, did it, recovering from that or not being able to walk for 4 months? I mean, that's a pretty massive life change, right? A pretty major, debilitating setback. Now that you're walking, even though you're not walking the way you were, now that you're playing drums, even though your foot feels a little stiff, do you have a different kind of level of appreciation for being able to do the things you can do than you did before?
I do. I know. I don't want to sound cliche when I say that, but it's it seems so easy to take the little things for granted.
Mm-hmm.
Waking up every day, breathing, having your eyesight, being able to hear, being able to take care of yourself. When I couldn't walk for 4 months, I had to have assistance getting dressed all the time. It was very difficult to go to the bathroom. It was very difficult to shower.
Right.
I needed help with all of that. A little bit humiliating in some ways,
Absolutely.
And sure.
Thinking I'm a grown man. Now I can't help myself.
Right.
But you know what? That just also seemed to me, that just makes me think, how grateful are you to have those people in your life that were willing to help you? Those good people around you.
And here's the thing, I'm at the risk of shining the light on myself, because that's not the intent whatsoever. But I told Jeremy just before we got on, I have 47 students, and I've over the last few years, I've been able to maintain 40 plus students, it kind of wavers in that, but all of those students are witnessing me going through this thing.
Right. Yeah.
And so I have some drummers who are working drummers around town, and they start talking about some argument or something that happened in their band or some disagreement with the club or whatever the case may be. And just their whole perception of that seems so different now after what I've gone through.
Right. You're as a model for dealing with stuff. This is what I was getting at. I feel like it puts into perspective all the things that we get hung up on and spend so much time worrying about and thinking about, and
perspective.
Yeah.
And then you realize, no, that stuff doesn't really matter. That stuff's not really as important as I maybe thought it was.
Well, if they come in and they said, well, I didn't practice this week because I was tired, and I'm in the corner with my crutch next to me or my walker and my water and my legs up on a chair wrapped in an ice machine.
Right.
And I'm going, you're tired?
Right. Like what I wouldn't give, what you wouldn't give to be able to practice. Right.
Yeah.
Moment. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So that whole perspective thing, it's like, oh, well, Fred's here and he's got a busted up leg and he's working. He's making it happen.
Right.
It's just what you do. I don't like being told no. I do not like being told no, I can't do something. And so when they say you can't walk, well, I have this physical impalement, but can I still drum? You betcha I'm going to find a way that I can still make this happen.
Right.
Can I still teach? Yep, I could still make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
Can I still be involved with planning my future and things that I want to work towards? Yes, absolutely. So it's just like, how much of the plan can I still work on, even though I can't walk?
That reminds me of a Suicidal Tendencies song, "You Can't Bring Me Down." Just that attitude, like, this is not going to stop me.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I'm sorry. I could keep talking, but I had another injury when I was 20. I was in a bad car accident and I shattered my left wrist. And I was filling in for a band, getting ready to do a big show. So I wrecked my truck on the freeway. It rolled. I hit ice suddenly. It was in the winter, and my truck rolled over and over and broke my wrist. I show up to the gig the next day with my arm in a cast. And the bass player goes, "No way." And I'm like, "We're doing the show." So I played that whole show with one hand.
Wow.
Totally Def Leppard.
Def Leppard style. Wow.
Yeah. It's like that's not going to stop the show from happening.
Amazing. I did once play a gig the same night that I had torn my ACL earlier that day.
Ow.
It was this giant, it all swollen up, but I was like, I don't care. I'm sitting on the chair and I'm playing.
I got in a head-on car collision, totaled my car, and the band came and picked me up and threw my drums in the van, and I played that night with a concussion.
Oh my God. It's
That's like in the movie Whiplash.
Whiplash, yeah. I was just going to say it's like in Whiplash where he gets in the car accident and still makes it to the gig all bloody.
Went to the hospital and had a concussion and he was put in the hospital after that night.
Wow.
That was pretty crazy. And I don't even know what I was thinking. All I remember was like, got to make it to the gig, man.
What do you think drives you to do that, Chip? Because I'm kind of the same way.
I don't know, man. I don't know, but I know that I've had enough of that. I've had enough of that self-pity that would say no, you know what I mean? I don't want that. I don't want that self-pity. I want to get out there and live my life. There's people right now getting shot at and having bombs blow up. And it's like, dude, I've got this opportunity. I'm going to make the most of this life I have. The freedom I get to enjoy to play my drums, I'm grateful for. And I just want to show up for life. I mean, the people that are listening know my story from the recovery episode that me and Bart did. But, you know, I had a chance at a new life. You know what I mean? After trying to commit suicide and living through this, being air medevaced and having my life be saved, every day I've woken up, I'm like, okay, yes, I'm alive. Okay, how far can we push the chips into the middle of the table today?
Right. Oh, I love that, Chip. I love it. I love it.
How about you, Jeremy? What about your adversity story?
Well, I got one that's very fresh. That's like less than a week old for you.
Uh-oh.
It's not exactly about my own adversity, but it's you know, when your kids go through stuff, you go through stuff, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I've talked about Evan many times on the show, and I've played videos of his playing, and you know, those of you who watch know he's a phenomenal pianist and composer, and he and I had hatched a plan to record an album of his original music this summer, and we had booked the studio, and we got commitments from really like a handful of the Bay Area's top jazz musicians. I mean, these are Grammy award-winning musicians who listened to his stuff, who knew, you know, I had some connection with some of them, and they listened to his stuff and they were digging it and they were happy to play on the album. So this was going to be sort of a massive coming out. He's 19 years old, you know, to put out an album with these luminaries on it, of all his original compositions. So
Nice.
super, this is like, you know, this was what was happening this summer. Right. And, he applied for 2 different grants to fund it. And I said to him, look, you know, I'm all in to do this and play and help you consult and help you manage this project, but I'm not going to pay for it. This has to be your thing. And he applied for a couple of different grants, and I helped him write the grant proposals, and they were really good. And he didn't get either of them. And we had one more sort of Hail Mary that we threw last week, which was connecting with this guy I met recently, who's a trumpet player, who's a you know, wealthy retiring commercial real estate guy and an amateur jazz trumpet player. And he was, you know, talking about supporting local jazz musicians and maybe creating a trust fund for supporting local jazz. And I approached him about maybe he would be interested in bankrolling the project, or coming on as the executive producer, I should say. And he ended up passing on it. And so this was, as you might imagine, super disappointing, because it means we're not recording the album this summer.
Yeah.
And, you know, I was disappointed, but Evan was pretty devastated. And, you know, kind of kept dwelling on, this is obvious. This is super personal story. I hope it's okay to share all this. I guess you guys have shared the same kind of stuff. He was dwelling on, oh, it's, you know, I put all this work into it. You know, it took me 50 hours to write that grant, and, you know, I'm working on these arrangements, and it was all for nothing. And I said, no, man, it's not all for nothing. You know, first of all, you went through the process, and, you know, you've just applied for the first grants you've ever applied for. You're 19 years old.
You learned about that.
You learned about that whole process, right? And what they're looking for and how to do it. And, you know, and that didn't stop him from, you know, sort of feeling like, oh, you know, doesn't matter. I put in all this time. It was wasted time. We have to put in all the same amount of time again if I wanted to do it. And I said, no, that's not true. You know, you can, it's not going to take you as much time the second time around. You're going to have more experience with it. You can know what you're doing better. And it'll give you time to flesh out your arrangements instead of having to write them all under stress for the deadline. And I said the only thing that's going to stop you from making this project into a reality is your decision not to do it.
Yep.
Yeah.
If you decide to quit, that's a guarantee this is never going to happen. But I promise you, from being a 54-year-old person, having gone through all kinds of things like this, seen it with other people's experiences, if this is something you really want to do, you will find a way to make it happen.
Yep.
I
There's
truly
a
believe
there's
that.
a quote there's a quote from Marilyn Savant that says, "Being defeated is often a temporary condition.
Right.
Giving up is what makes it
It's
permanent."
permanent. That's right. We've talked about that, and you've talked about that a lot, Chip. I know.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's one thing we're older, right? We've seen it, we've been through it. It's another thing when it's sort of when you're younger and you put all your eggs into a basket, and just like you were saying with your metal band when you were going out, and Rick talks about
Yeah.
with his punk band, trying to make it and playing at CBGB's. It can be it can be a pretty intense feeling of loss, like your dream is lost.
Yeah.
Gentlemen, I have to step away. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. I'll be back as soon as possible.
No
Okay.
worries. No worries. You would give us a heads up. We knew that was coming. Yeah. So he's coming around. It's taken some time, and that's usually what it takes, right? More than anything is time and support. And so I've been giving him all the support I can and trying to talk him through it. And there's a certain amount of it where he just has to feel the feelings. I can't talk him out of being disappointed. I can't talk him out of being angry. I can't talk him out of feeling sorry for himself, other than to say, this is, the future is still there if you want to make it happen. And, you can redouble your efforts next year and look for other grant opportunities and make more connections with people. And, who knows what the future holds.
Well, he did all this work and to apply for the grants and all this excitement that's wrapped in amongst all of that. Like, yeah, this is going to happen. We're doing the thing, know, and then you run into that brick wall.
Right.
Like you said, you can't really do anything about those feelings. And that's something he has to experience and go through. But when the next opportunity, the next grant writing comes along, he's like, I've already done this. I know how to write for a grant. I know how to apply for that and knows what it takes. And so it should become easier.
Right.
And maybe the songs evolve a little bit more. So the recording in the future is better than what it may have been now.
Right. I mean, for sure, he'll have written new tunes by next year. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe he'll be like, oh, wow, had we recorded last year, we would not have been able to include these two new tunes that are my favorites,
Right.
Or I met this amazing sax player and, oh man, we have this great connection. And now I'm going to get him to play on the record, and last year that wouldn't have happened. So, right. But it's hard to be, those are all theoreticals, right? And it's hard especially when you're younger to sort of embrace those as, real, because that's just, you're just imagining those things to happen. Like, yeah, well,
Yeah. When you say those things to those people right now, there's too much emotion to think clearly, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right.
When it's Wyatt, when I was 19, I applied to work for this company called Worldwide Showcase based out of Tampa Bay, Florida. And they put bands together and we did high school assembly programs on like stay in school and things like that. And I applied. They had 4 bands they put out. They had 1 drummer spot open. Well, it got filled pretty quick. But I kept getting told no. They had my material. No, there's no spot for you. There's no spot for you. There's no spot. And I would call every couple of days, like to see if anything changed. Really just letting them know. I was probably a little over the top in my pursuit of that. Well, their official camp was supposed to start like mid-July or the end of August. I can't remember for sure when it was. But that time of that starting had come and gone. And so I told my boss that I worked for at the time, I said, well, it looks like I'm not going. It's not happening. Well, then the next weekend, I got a phone call on Friday, and they said the 1 drum spot opened. If you can be here by Sunday, it's yours. So I went to work. I called my dad, who worked near the airport, and told him he bought me a one-way ticket to Tampa, Florida, and of quit my job and went and did this tour for 7 months. I was gone from home.
Wow.
Nice.
But it was this constant, it can't happen. You know,
Right.
I did my audition, was told no.
Right.
But I like I said earlier, I don't like being told no, that I can't do something. I'm like, I'm going to exhaust every possible scenario to really get to that final it's not happening thing. And rarely do I get to that. It's like,
Right.
oh, let's make this happen.
What if?
So I went through that experience. And so in 2019, when my son Christian was auditioning for battalion to be on the snare line, because they only take 9 snares, maybe 8. And it was Saturday night, and the audition was over at 10, and it wasn't until well after 11 they were still trying to make a decision if they were going to contract him or not. And they ended up making him the first alternate, so that he wasn't contracted, and sent him home. So we're driving home in the car the next day, and he's like, they don't know what they're doing. He was making all these excuses, like they're passing over me and that's their mistake, kind of a thing. Like there's some ego there getting in the way.
Right.
And I said, Christian, this is what they exactly. I said, this is what they do. This is what they're trained to do. They're looking for something very specific. Right. I said, this is what you're going to do though. When we get home, you're going to email the drumline caption head, and you're going to email the corps director, and you're going to say thank you
for the audition, the opportunity,
the opportunity. And
good dad,
I'll help you write that if you need it, but you're going to let them know that if something happens between now and tour and they need somebody, that you're ready to go. Like, you're going to let them know that you're somebody they can count on.
Right.
Okay, so he emailed, and they responded and said, keep up on all the material that you have. Keep in touch with the guy in charge of the drum line, but there's no guarantees.
Of course.
The first rehearsal came up, he emailed him. He said, even though I'm not in the group, should I be there just to observe and witness this thing? And they said, yes, you can come, but don't expect anything.
Right.
So he got there, and he's hanging out, and he's playing on a pad while everybody else has got drums. And he had played bass clarinet all through school, in addition to drumming. And he knows how to read music really, really well. And he can adapt to things really, really well. Well, we hadn't heard from him for a couple hours. Now he's messaging us that he's going to be on the horn line playing euphonium.
Wow.
I thought he was messing with us. But the corps director and the people in charge of the different things found out that he could play bass clarinet, and to move from that to euphonium wasn't a big stretch to be able to do that. And he had all this marching experience.
Wow, you never know what
ended up going on tour. Yeah. He showed up and was there and willing to do whatever it took to be part of the group. And then from that moment on, after that tour, he was on snare for the rest of his year.
Well, yeah. See what? So look, yeah. There's that happy ending. I mean, and it's not that all these stories have happy endings. I can share some of my students too, where they didn't get into the band, but they kept a good attitude. They kept emailing like that, and then they got in the band for whatever reason. And it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you do all the right things you're supposed to do, and you send all the great emails, and you show up for the rehearsal to observe, and you don't get in the band.
And the universe says no.
Right. Yep. Or not now,
Exactly. I like that. Not now.
You're not yet. Right. I mean, and then it's more of like, it's so easy to just be completely focused on the result. Mm-hmm. But really the most important thing is the process, and sort of like, like what I was talking about with Evan, like he went through the process of this whole thing. Like he had to deal with talking to all these Grammy winning musicians, and he had to talk to the engineer, and he had to apply for the grants, and he had to do all these things that gave him life experience that will serve him for the next time he does. Maybe it's not even the same thing, but something different, So maybe now he has a certain kind of confidence because he's done this, that'll help him in some other way. And so you like you were saying, Fred, you don't always know what what doors are opening from your experiences of a door feeling like it's being closed.
Yeah.
And there's ways in which you learn and grow that you're not even going to be aware of and may not even show up for years down the line.
Exactly.
And it may not show up in the way you imagine it's going to show up. You know, you imagine like, oh, I didn't get it this time, so I'm going to do it really hard again next time, and I'm going to get it next time. Well, you might. That would be great. But you might not.
Yeah.
But that could be something. Yeah. There could be something from that process that gave you some nugget of experience or confidence or whatever that manifests in some other unexpected way down the road.
You know, if you watch a football game and it's a really close scoring game and they're down to seconds, right? And it, to us as the audience, it looks really clear, like who's going to win and who's going to lose. But sometimes you watch the team that seems to have everything against them seem to rally within that last couple seconds and end up winning the game. Like they just never give up or give in.
That was game 1 of the NBA Finals. Did you watch that? That was game 1 of the NBA Finals. The OKC was up the entire game, and then Tyrese Halliburton pulled it out of his butt with a second to go and won the game at the buzzer beater. Yeah,
that reminds me of a story of my dad told me. 2 NFL receivers got drafted into the NFL, and one of them just kind of did the thing where it's like he did the bare minimum, stayed on the team, attended practice, and the other one was hustling and training and hustling and going for the ball when it dropped and going for the ball when it dropped. And in the crunch time in the game, who's going to get the ball? The guy that keeps going for the ball, that keeps showing up for the event. You know what I mean? The one that wants it more is the one that usually ends up winning. And there's a lot about that in the Talent Code, that book you were talking about, Jeremy. I've read a lot about that. You know, I wanted to tell you a story, what you were talking about with the not being in control of the end result, and being too fixed on the end result and not really being present in today. My mother was friends with Rita Coolidge, who was married to Christopher Christopherson for some time. And she was friends with a lady named Mary Wilson from the Supremes. And we had dinner with them one time, and I was in I'm in my country band in Tucson trying to make it as a drummer. And I'm telling her about my career, and I want to, any career advice you can give me. And she looked at me and she said, learn to be happy now. While you're going for that record deal, learn to be happy now. Because with my group, the Supremes, it was all about that next thing. I'm going to be happy when we get this. And then we were sure we were happy when we got it. But then that feeling subsided, and we set a new goal, and we weren't really happy again. It was like not until that goal gets reached. But you have to learn to have some kind of joy in the process. Learn to enjoy the process was her message to me.
I love that. I agree with it 1,000%. And it comes back to what we were talking about, at the beginning of the show, about appreciation for the things that you can do and the things that you do have.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of a way of being.
That's an attitude. Yeah.
And I think when you can really, it's hard. It's hard to get to that. It's not encouraged in our society, right?
No, it's not.
Especially in America, it's like buy more. You're not happy until you get this next thing, But if you can approach that place where you're, grateful for all the opportunities you have, including, playing music, breathing, walking, having friends, being able to use your vocal cords. I mean,
gratitude.
Yeah, it comes back to
that attitude of gratitude.
I feel like it's going to help you. It's going to actually help you become more successful. Like those goals that you have in your mind of things you want to achieve are more. You're better able to achieve them when you're focused on the process more than the result.
Look, man, I've been working on this Stick, Tricks, and Showmanship book for 5 years. I've been stopping working on it because I'm overwhelmed and I get busy doing other things. But this is a goal. I want to finish this book, and it's in front of me. And every time I get discouraged, I try to get back to exactly what you just said. Look, man, I have the ability to get into my laptop and start writing or editing. I don't have to do the whole thing. I can do one part of it. And you know what? I get to set a timer for 20 minutes and just work on that dream. I get to. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I've got gratitude for that. So I've been making lots of progress on that book, and I don't know when it'll be out. I've refused to give myself a deadline. I've got a deadline on my edits, but I don't know when the book will be out. But it's going to be finished, man, and that's going to feel good. But the process has to feel good. You know, you've got to learn how to make yourself happy with the process you're making. Right. Today's practice.
That's all there is, you know, because like you say, how many of us have seen this, experienced it ourselves, or seen it with other people, where you achieve the goal you set out to achieve, and it turns out it's not as fulfilling as you hoped it would be.
Yeah. Or you meet your drum hero and they're not who you wanted them to be.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or you go out on a date, you finally get a date with the girl, you know, the hot girl in class, and then it turns out you don't like her.
Yeah.
Not speaking from personal experience or anything.
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah, that's that. I think, you know what, when we took Ian down and dropped him off for spring training with the drum corps, the CEO of the battalion gave 4 core values for the group. And the number one thing that on that list was become an exceptional human being. And what he was referring to was like, they're all together for the commonality of playing music and the singular goal of advancing the group. Because you have so many people of so many different walks of life, of different belief systems and political, this so polarizing political things, and just like cutting through all of that garbage to go, this is the thing we're doing together as a team. Yeah. And I just thought, you know what? Just be an exceptional human being all the time, every time, to everyone. You cannot go wrong with that.
Yeah.
You just cannot. And so when the adversity of things come along, it's like, well, things are going pretty good. And we got a little bump in the road here we got to deal with, and know that there's a solution in that somehow. And I think it's okay to have emotions attached to, like Evan going through what he's going through presently with this thing falling flat. It's like, okay, well, what do I do for the next time? Or is there an alternative to this? Is there a smaller version of this, or whatever that is that he decides? But it's just knowing that the sun's going to come up again tomorrow, and you can face that new thing. And there's always going to be some challenge that comes and lands in your lap, and you're like, okay, now what do I have to do? And I think if we become exceptional human beings, when those things happen, they seem to be maybe not as gravitational as we think that they are.
Well, and you know, without them, imagine a life. I mean, on the one hand, you could say, "Oh, that sounds great," a life without these kinds of challenges and adversity, but you're missing out on opportunities for growth and depth of experience and appreciation for what you can have in this life on this planet.
Exactly.
You know, one of the things, there was an interesting study I read about the other day about the exceptional elite level professional athletes, and one of the common traits that they all shared was that many of them had to go through some adversity as young kids, whether it was the loss of a parent or some financial hardship or whatever. And it taught them the value of gratitude and appreciation and of hard work and discipline, and that made a difference in their trajectory. And I think when things come too easy, you know, you're just missing out on opportunities. So, yeah.
I think people are capable of doing things that may seem difficult. What am I trying to say? It was in my head. It was a lot better.
That's right.
People are capable of doing way more than they think they are.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah.
And you don't even know, and you won't even know what you're capable of until you're facing adversity.
Exactly.
I had a drum student ask me, he's like, he instructed people on how to jump out of airplanes, and he had over 4,000 jumps, and he's driven his motorcycle from here across the country like 5 times, and he's done all these amazing bucket list type things, and he's 60 years old. And he looked at me and he said, "So are you doing your best?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "No, you're not. You're not doing even close to your best. You know, blah, blah, blah. And he started listing off things that I could be doing that I'm not doing. And it hurt at first. It was like, whoa, hey, you know, oh. But like I drove home from that going, you know what? He's right. I'm not maximizing my potential in this area or that area. And I can be. And there's things that I can do. So not to be mean to myself, but to say, hey, let's giddy up. Let's get back in the saddle. Let's edit this book. Let's you know, attempt to get that Corvette that you wanted to get or whatever it was. Let's get back into life. Let's see what we can bring to life rather than what we can take.
Yeah.
Nicely put, Chip. Very nicely put.
I like that too.
We're coming up on the end of our show here. Wanted to say thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks, Mary, for chiming in and supporting us. And I know a lot of more people will be watching this after it's posted. So feel free to leave comments even after the fact, and we'll see them and respond. And thank you to Fred for coming on our show as once again our special guest.
FredRockFischer.com.
Our brother from another. Because Rick's, if you guys are okay with it, because Rick's not here to play us out, I'm going to share a little video on our way out. Is that okay?
All right, let's do that. Yeah. Let's do a goodbye video.
All right, here we go. 1 second. This is one of Evan's. This is me playing with Evan at one of his college audition.
Right
videos. On. Let's see if this is working. Hold on. Oops. That was the end of it. Here we go.
For people listening, they're not seeing Jeremy's left hand dance.
You got to come in person for that. Unpaid. You got to leave a big tip. All right. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that, Jeremy.
Sure.